Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to Alcohol and Beyond on a Carl channel. On today's show, we've got two special guests who've come on. We're going to talk about addictions and relapses, and we're also going to be talking about how we can help people out there in the community who've got problems with drink and drugs. With no more overdue, I'd like to introduce you to Grant and to Jim. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hello.
To start with, you've been dealing with addictions for many, many years now, and you've had many, many encounters with different people, different types of people, angry people, people who get annoyed with you, people who complain. You know, how successful has it been, since you've been doing this?
I'll let you answer that.
It's been very successful because we specialise in providing home-based addictions treatment. If you look at the treatment regimes we offer, we reckon that we're getting probably around 70% success of people who complete their courses and end up sober and clean. And we get success also with those people who find treatment from other agencies and who just want to do a detox, a home-based medical detox. So it's entirely successful.
Yeah. So through Alcohol and Beyond and working with us, so far we have had a success rate, from what I can see, of nearly 98%. Grant, going back to you, obviously we work directly with yourself. I mean, we've been working together now for coming on, what, 7-8 months?
Yeah.
We've not encountered any problems with anybody at all. No complaints, nothing at all.
Been smooth sailing most of the way. Yeah, it's been good.
It's been good. I mean, have you found that some of the clients have been a little bit cagey, of some of them wanting to wait before they take on the service?
It varies from person to person, doesn't it? Everyone's completely unique. I think you certainly help for encouraging them to start sooner. There's a very small window of opportunity for someone to seek help for addiction. It can be 10 minutes or 10 days.
Yeah.
If you don't get them in that time into treatment or receiving some sort of detox, then they might go out for another 2 to 3 years before they again seek help, or they might even die.
Right.
So
well, the family intervention sessions that we actually do, that I actually go out and talk to them, that does help, because the family starts to understand that this person isn't drinking or taking drugs because they want to take drugs. They're doing it because the withdrawal symptoms that they're getting are so severe that they can't cope, they can't manage. I mean, how quickly do you find that they get onto the telephone once the referral's been made, that they sort of get in touch straight away? Is it immediate? Is it?
it's normally quite a quick process. When you're involved doing the intervention, it's normally very, very quick compared to other streams. And I think that's the key to it. I think it's speed. Speed is the key to getting it started, rather.
So basically, for the viewers, with these interventions that we do, what we do is we sit the family down, and we sit the person down who's in addiction. Whatever kind of addiction it could be. It could be alcohol, could be opiates, it could be anything at all. Once the family understands what the alcoholic or the drug addict is going through, and vice versa, what the drug addict and the alcoholic is putting the family through, there is a bonding that starts, and that is the beginning of recovery. I found, Grant, that most people that we've put through, and because we've been working as a team now, as I say, for 7 or 8 months, they have got big trust, and they have put, you know, testimonials on websites and stuff like that. You know, the encouragement that people need is to pick up that phone.
Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line is that they need help. What do you think, in your experience, stops them asking for help?
Generally, a stigma attached to addiction is the main thing. Shame, guilt. There's a lot of things. It really depends on the communities as well. There's so much more of a stigma in certain communities than there is in others. So, say definitely the shame of admitting there's a problem. You know, that's one of the main things. Yeah, they're burying their head in the sand, a lot of people, when the help's there and it's available for them.
You mean your experience? What do you think?
Well, I agree with Grant that there are issues of shame. There are lots of pressures on people to stop drinking, and people who are addicted usually have problems with denial. I mean, they say that denial is one of the first symptoms of addiction, and it stands for "don't even notice I am lying." And that's quite telling, that some people will bluff their way through the problem and pretend that they don't have an issue, and that the problem is all that of the family, when we all know that is not the case. But society tends to exclude people that are showing symptoms of addiction, people who are before the magistrate's court and getting into trouble all the time. That certainly doesn't help. We find that once you've done your intervention, if there is a window of opportunity, Grant is absolutely right, it needs to be addressed quickly. And if it is addressed, then people can commence their treatment regime fairly quickly.
And how do you find the reaction of the family? I mean, I get numerous telephone calls from family members saying, "Oh, he seems to have changed," or "she seems to have changed." I mean, how does that make you feel, that we are changing people's lives? I mean, you know, how does it feel?
Some people find it easier living somebody who is drunk and out of their head all the time. If they can prop them on the settee and let them sleep, but then they don't have a problem. And sometimes when people find sobriety, they can be much more argumentative and much more difficult to live with, and that takes some getting used to. But the reality is that somebody who's addicted usually offers unmanageable behaviour, and it's very easy for family members to follow that unmanageability, so the whole household has problems. And what we want to do is make certain that we support both the person with the addiction and the family member.
That's right.
Because this is very much a family illness.
It is, because on one hand, the person who's been addicted for many, many years has got a certain a kind of behaviour, and when they suddenly get sober, their persona changes and they become different, and the family find it hard to adjust. It's a very, very hard sort of balance to have, but it's one that can be addressed.
It can do, and we're there to support family and the addict, and what we have to remember is often the alcoholic or the addict is powerless over the drug of their choices. They're powerless over alcohol and drugs, and the family person, the family member, is powerless over their loved ones. I mean, we can change ourselves, but we cannot change another person, no matter how much we love them. They've got to do that themselves.
Yep, they've got to want that change.
Yes.
Initially.
Yes.
I mean, I quite often find with the interventions, the intervention will be arranged by the uncle or the aunt. Can you come round at this time? He should be at home, or she should be at home. We need to sit down and talk to her. And I have to say to them, look, until the person themselves says, can you come and see us as a family unit? I've got a problem. I can't do it. I have to say, I'm sorry, but unless the person who has got that problem wants to talk, wants to look at the options of recovery, I'm sorry, but I refuse to come. And eventually, even the family members, when they're strong enough, they do get the person to ring. And sometimes when they do call and they speak to you, you realise from their tone they're actually being coerced into doing it, as opposed to their willingness is there. Have you ever felt, well, you don't get really involved in the intervention side of it, but have you ever found that sometimes when you've spoken to somebody after one of our interventions that this person really doesn't want it?
I spent a lifetime living with an alcoholic, and I tried for years to control them, to batter them into submission, and I failed. And I had nothing to do with the eventual journey into recovery. That was taken by the other person. So if I failed, and I was very much a control freak who wanted things my way, then I would have thought that the person doing the intervention has little chance of success. The only thing that we can say is that the addict must have ownership of their recovery. And if they do, then the chances are much greater that they will succeed.
Grant, what about in your opinion?
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I've gone a bit blank. It varies. With the ones you get, the interventions you do, obviously there is a part of that person who wants the treatment. If someone just puts their hands up and say they don't want it, the chances are nil to zero. Yeah, as long as they show a glimmer that they want it, all they need is a desire to stop drinking or stop taking drugs. They don't have to have stopped, as long as they have a desire to change and, you know, look at their behaviours, then they've got a chance. At least they've got a chance. But if there's someone who doesn't want it, they don't want it.
Have you had any so far, out of all the interventions that we've done, the Alcohol and Beyond and us as a team, have we ever had one that's totally just picked up the phone and said, I've had a chat, but I don't want to do this?
Not so far.
Not so far.
Not yet.
So as you can see, you know, these things do work. These family interventions do work. You do need to pick up the phone. The numbers are on your screen. Talking to the person, but the person has to want it. The person has to pick up the phone and have a talk to Alcohol and Beyond, ring a call channel, get them on the phone. These things can work, and a recovery plan can be put into place for you, because at the end of the day you're not alone and these things can be done. Going back to the recovery process, I mean, as soon as the referrals are done, obviously the doctors are appointed. I mean, once they're appointed, the recovery plans are made. I mean, these recovery plans, they are based on individual assessments. Now, a lot of people ask, how long is it going to take? I mean, what do you normally say to them?
Detox-wise, that's the first bit we need to get out of the way. You need to get the substance out of the picture, so you can start working with the person. It varies on the substance. Alcohol is generally quite straightforward, 5 to 10 days. Opiates can be a little bit longer, depending if they're cross-addicting with certain things. Once you've got them detoxed, you can start looking at the recovery process. It's completely ongoing. It never stops. It depends what kind of support groups they look to work with afterwards, whether they go to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, NA, Narcotics Anonymous, and whether they take on additional kind of telephone work with ourselves. It varies. It's an ongoing process. Everyone's different. You can't expect to reverse a 20-year addiction in a month.
No, you can't. Not at all.
That's the reality with it.
I mean, a lot of people decide they want to go to AA, or they want to go to NA, or they want to try and do it themselves. But as we all know, all three of us sitting here, you can't do this alone. We all know quite clearly that whether you're an alcoholic or somebody within drugs, narcotics, you've got to speak to somebody. Only somebody who's been through it can help somebody who's going through it, because the empathy is just not there. Family members just don't understand. They will simply say, why can't you just stop? Do you get a lot of that? Do you get members of the family saying, you know, okay, why does he need to take substances to come off drugs? Why does he need to take substances to come off alcohol? Do you get that?
If he doesn't or she doesn't take medication to come off alcohol, and if someone is drinking significant amounts of alcohol and they suddenly stop, then that is extremely dangerous. People could die if they're drinking a lot of alcohol and suddenly stop. And the same goes with opiates. They won't die, but they'll feel like they've got a very bad flu, and it'll be very difficult just to go cold turkey and stop. So sometimes friends and relatives and family members can say the wrong thing, because part of the assessment process is for a psychologist and or a doctor, a medical doctor. We need to assess whether they need a detox, because if they don't have medication, then that could cause further medical problems. You're right, they can't do it alone, and that's why they should come to you and set up a structure whereby professionals will deal with this problem with them.
I've heard horror stories of, well, we've locked him in a room for a week and he's come back out and he's fought past us and he's run down the stairs, or she's run down the stairs straight at the door and disappeared for 2 or 3 hours. I mean, I can understand that behaviour. That behaviour will be straight out to get the substance that their body's been craving for. I mean, for the benefit of the cameras, I mean, if you could, Grant, if you could tell them how dangerous it is to do that, it would really, really help. I mean,
yeah, the risks involved, especially with alcohol, as Jim said, can be fatal. If you're drinking a large amount and you suddenly stop, you get the minimal withdrawal effects of the sweats, the shakes, all that kind of stuff, but it goes further, it goes into seizures and real dangerous territory. I personally wouldn't recommend anyone trying to detox from alcoholic behaviour without proper medical support at all. And opiates are similar, not as dangerous, but for the person, yeah, it feels like they're going through hell, you know. It's, you need some sort of support with it, definitely.
What about you, in your opinion, Jim?
Grant is absolutely right. A doctor needs to assess the physiological needs of the client, of the patient, and certainly the counselling psychologist would also need to assess whether the person is safe to have a home or a residential detox.
Right, we're going to go off on to something totally different now. I have a lot of people that say, I've been to my GP's referred me to somebody else, and they're taking their time, and I keep getting different appointments, and this keeps happening and that keeps happening. It's gone into 5 weeks, it's gone into 6 weeks. Psychologically, how do you think that person is feeling?
The person will be desperate for help, and sadly the drug and alcohol treatment regimes in this country, run by local authorities and the NHS, mean that we live in a postcode lottery. In some areas they'll be able to respond reasonably quickly. In other areas people will be waiting months and months and months for assessments. People, when they get a window of opportunity, need to take that opportunity, and it's pretty hopeless when you go to your doctor who refers you on to the drug and alcohol teams, and then you have to wait another 3 months, because by the time the 3 months is up you may not want to do anything about your recovery at all. So people need to move fairly quickly. If their relative is saying they need help should be offered as quickly as possible.
I mean, the 3 months that we're talking about, I've had experiences of people who've waited 3 months and they've gone yellow. Their eyes have gone yellow. They've looked normal, and next thing you know, they've gone pale. And then when you ask them, so, well, I've been to my meetings, I've been to this, and I keep getting told, oh, we want to see motivation. We want to see motivation. I mean, how do you motivate somebody who is addicted to a substance to come off it? Grant?
I don't see it working how it's structured through the GPs. I myself, through my own addiction, went to the GP on numerous occasions. The advice I was given was, I'm not going to take shots at the GP, but it wasn't, looking back on it now, working in addiction, it wasn't the correct advice to give. I sat around waiting for 3.5 months, and I went to keep a drink diary and all these kind of things they were getting me to do, and it didn't work. I ended up going into a private rehab, which I think saved my life. I don't think waiting works. The window's small. I think you need to get someone into primary or high-level treatment. One meeting a week is not enough to motivate someone to stop drinking.
Is there a point where perhaps that kind of treatment is applicable? For example, if you're drinking a quarter bottle a day and you're fed up of it, or you're drinking 3 pints in the evening, it's applicable. But if you're going on to a bottle a day, or a bottle and a half, or a litre a day, then it's a different story.
Well, it could be a different story, but it might not be. I mean, the issue is you need to be assessed to work out whether you have an addiction problem or whether you are a heavy drinker or a drug user. If you are a heavy drinker, there are ways and means of cutting your drinking down if you're not addicted. I mean, it's possible to teach somebody who is a heavy drinker to reduce the amount of alcohol that they're consuming. However, if that person's life is so unmanageable that they could be considered to be an alcoholic or an addict, then sometimes an abstinence program is the way to go, which means stopping drinking and drugging with the help of somebody who can provide therapies and with the help of a doctor. It's important to draw the difference. That is why someone who is about to enter treatment will go through a vigorous form of assessment.
But then, if somebody's drinking 70 cl or a litre a day, that's alcoholic behaviour.
It can be, but it might not necessarily. There are some very heavy drinkers who would not be deemed to be an alcoholic, but they are heavy drinkers and they can reduce it. I know a number of people who have massive alcohol problems and they drink a relatively small amount. It's not necessary to be a very large drinker to have a alcohol dependency problem.
So how do you differentiate? Is it the sweats, the nausea, the shaking in the morning?
That would happen if you suddenly stopped, and that's why you need to be assessed. Don't suddenly stop, seek advice. How do you assess the difference between a heavy drinker and somebody who is completely dependent? That is achieved usually through a series of intense assessments carried out by a trained psychologist or counsellor.
So somebody who has had their last drink at 9 p.m. in the evening, or 9:30, 10 o'clock, is waking up at 6 o'clock, shaking, sweating, got the nausea, and they've been doing that every day, that would be classed as an alcoholic, wouldn't it?
It could well be, yes. Yes.
Because there are a lot of people that I know that class themselves, there's nothing wrong with me, I could drink a bottle a day, I behave normally, but they get all those behaviours, but those are the ones they hide.
Yes, but conversely, somebody who goes and has 3 pints of beer could also be deemed to be an alcoholic if they do that on a 7-day-a-week basis. They will become dependent. So the quantity is not always the best way to judge whether someone is an alcoholic.
No, not at all.
But the question of, is their life unmanageable, and is the life of the family members becoming unmanageable, that is a much better indicator.
And also the dependency.
Absolutely. The physical dependency.
Grant, going through your journey, how far did you get? I mean, my journey, my life became unmanageable.
Yeah, I started drinking young. I think it's kind of normal in this country to start drinking at 14, 15, peer pressure. For a long period I suspected I had a problem. I never did much about it. To the age of about 22, 23, the unmanageability, as Jim was saying, started occurring. Yeah, I started messing up jobs, into trouble with the law, just a whole list of things, but I never put it onto the alcohol. I then started toying around the idea I was alcoholic. I'd stop and then think I wasn't.
So
maybe the worst thing you can do is
like normal behaviour. Yeah. Well, this is all we've got time for this episode. I thank you both for coming and sharing your professional knowledge and working with Alcohol and Beyond. This is all we've got time for today. The Ajdi Shole Dhanbad. The Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
I'm Grant Ullman, alcoholic in recovery. I grew up in North Yorkshire, quite a rural area. I started drinking around the age of 12, just experimenting. Eventually progressed. When I got a bit older, carried on drinking more. Started experimenting with cannabis until the age of about 18. It's kind of a normal thing to do, peer pressure. It's kind of standard behaviour where I grew up. Most people I know smoked cannabis, drank alcohol. Drinking progressed as I got a job, started working. It was kind of traditional to go out drinking on a Thursday, Friday and Saturday. Then became a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, every day of the week. I never had any huge issues. It was normal behaviour because of the people I associated with, getting drunk and doing stupid things. I moved away from Yorkshire when I was about 23, started working in banking. It was at this kind of time my alcohol problems started becoming a little bit more apparent. I started having run-ins with the law, missing Mondays. Just basic things became quite unmanageable. Work started becoming more and more difficult. I was what I would call a functioning alcoholic for maybe 3 or 4 years after this, up until the age of about 25, 26. Eventually something has to give. It's a progressive disease, alcoholism. My health was suffering. I began throwing up blood. I was drinking neat vodka for long periods. I just lied. This went on for 3 or 4 months and my drinking got incredibly worse during this period. I eventually went into a private rehab facility for 2 weeks. I thought this would be enough, but it lasted. Legal issues as well. I was getting arrested for petty drunkenness. You know, every time I went out, I'd probably get arrested for just being drunk and disorderly. Eventually, my family stepped in, thankfully. They sent me away to South Africa to do rehab there for 3 months. That went very well. I found Alcoholics Anonymous, started working with them, going to as many meetings as I could. Just following an honest living programme really, and staying away from alcohol and drugs. I still struggle to find work, so off the back of that I ended up actually getting involved in an addiction treatment programme, trying to help other people. Find it strengthens my recovery, trying to work with other addicts. It reminds me of where I was and how close I am to that at all times, working with people in addiction and trying to help them. I've started working with Harvey at Alcohol and Beyond in the last 6 to 8 months, and that's going really well. We're looking to help people in India and South Africa at the moment. Me and Harvey from Alcohol and Beyond are looking to travel to India in March or April 2016. I myself do a lot of work in South Africa with poorer communities, trying to help with addiction. We're hoping to move the same kind of process to India, in particular southern India and Punjab. This trip will be to get our feet on the ground and see how bad the problem is. We've got a lot of support. We work with a lot of community-based groups, charities, and we have a lot of professionals involved, so we're really hoping to spread the recovery message and offer treatment to people who have been unable to receive it through many various reasons. We believe the addiction problem in India is one of the worst in the world, with poorer communities severely affected without adequate treatment available. So we're hoping to make a real difference and do some good work in the community out there. Okay, I kind of started with my drinking days. I was drinking beer, kind of WKDs, Mad Dog 2020. I used to like my brandy and I carried on drinking that for years. When I started realising I had a problem with alcohol, I was having to drink in the mornings to take away the shakes. I'd be retching when I woke up. My belief at the time was vodka didn't give off any kind of odour, which I now believe not to be too true. I used to have to drink half a bottle of vodka when I woke up just to get me able to go to work. It's just terrible looking back on it. And I used to actually believe that nobody noticed. Nobody has said anything about it. It was years ago, but I imagine I must have stunk like a brewery. But it got me through that period. I started to really abuse relationships I was in. I wouldn't call them relationships, I'd call them hostage taking. I got married kind of just before I was fully into my alcohol addiction, but it was very apparent that it was going to happen. That marriage was single-handedly really destroyed by trust levels when I would say I'm going to the pub for a beer and I'd end up home 2 days later after being in a police station. So just doing the most normal task, my family would be worried about me. I'd be going to get a haircut or just going to the shop and I'd reappear maybe 2 days later or 3 days later, very drunk, intoxicated, possibly taking drugs. The trust levels throughout my entire family, they didn't believe anything I told them. I was deceitful to the level where I couldn't trust myself. I still don't really trust myself. That's why I attend AA and do things daily to keep on track, because my mind deceives me every day and it constantly tries to tell me that I haven't got a problem. One of the worst things for me that happened that maybe kept me drinking for a little longer than I should have was the ability to stop on my own for a period of maybe a week or 2 weeks. It would give me false hope that no, I'm not an addict, I'm just a heavy drinker, I don't actually have a problem. After 3 days of being sober, you feel like you've conquered the world, and of course you go and drink to celebrate. This was an ongoing pattern for a long period where I believed if I could stop myself, I was not alcoholic. But I was actually stopping by smoking weed or taking other drugs, so I was just replacing an addiction with another addiction. And even when I first found recovery from alcoholism, I found my behaviours when I wasn't attending AA or groups so much, my behaviour was becoming very, very selfish and very odd, you know. I'd become addicted to certain things, maybe driving or going to the gym or certain behaviours. I was just obsessive about certain things, and you find that addiction runs through every part of my life, and I have to really keep on top of it all the time. Meetings work well for me, speaking to other people who have been in recovery, you know, speaking to Harvey, speaking to Jim. It helps, you know, just speaking to someone to touch base and remember where you were. It's the best way for me to remain sober. Family-wise, the trust is coming back slowly. It's a long process. I can't expect people to suddenly trust and expect me to do the correct thing when I've been doing the wrong thing for almost 30 years, you know. But it gets easier day by day. When I was actively drinking, my circles of friends started to change quite dramatically. It's almost like a magnetic force draws you into other alcoholics, other people who are very, very heavy drinkers and drug users. I tended to stop associating with my so-called normal friends or people I knew through work, because my behaviours were becoming far too erratic and unacceptable. It's also like a cushion, a bit of safety in that everyone else is behaving like that, so that behaviour is completely normal. You'd meet with people and the only thing you'd have in common would be drinking and arguing about nothing. And for years and years I'd just associated with the wrong people, and again that draws you back in when you do try and stop drinking. When your only associates are heavy drinkers or drug users, it's so easy to fall in that pattern. People, places and things are the most dangerous things for me for drinking, so I've really got to keep tabs on who I associate with, what places I go, what kind of things I do. I've had to avoid football games because I associated it with drinking for years and years, so you've got to make a lot of changes to remain sober. It's just something you can learn, but it takes time.